but a persistent one. So it's a stubborn illusion. What does he mean by stubborn illusion? All right, that's your test question, guys. So how do you explain that? If the future, the past, the present all exist at the same time, and according to Einstein's theory of gravity, they do exist at the same time, why then the present is the only thing we get to perceive? So I want you to focus on the term illusion. What's the meaning of illusion?
Imagining something there.
I'm sorry, say again?
Imagining something there.
Okay, illusion is imagining something there. Is that something that you imagine, or is that something that you perceive?
It can be processed different ways, but like sometimes illusions are placed on you. Like if you're in the desert, you have illusions, and sometimes when you have when you think about something, you imagine it and you illusion it happening in front of you.
Oh, okay. So let's talk about the external ones, because you can illusion meaning that you make something up in your head, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
like
you can come up with an erroneous conclusion because your facts are not very straight, or you're not putting them together properly, right? That's what you're saying. Okay. So let's talk about I'm talking about visual illusions.
Time.
Okay, so time isn't okay. Okay, because I don't want to have okay, Kylie, I'm just gonna give you 10 points for the comments you made. All right. I'm not necessarily discussing philosophy here. Let's discuss illusion. What Kylie said was kind of interesting. Mirage, for example, she was talking about mirages. You do see something, right? But what you're seeing is not there. But your eyes pick up on something, and that tells you that there's something there, despite the fact that there's nothing there. You're in a desert, you're really thirsty, you're looking for water, and all of a sudden you see a lake. All right, despite the fact that there's nothing going on there. So the illusion is created by what? That's what I'm asking.
The person's point of view, I guess.
It could be, very good. And the reason why you're able to see something is because of what? Your eyeballs, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of eyeballs, so you see something, and then the information gets transmitted to the brain, and then the brain makes the interpretation of what you're looking at. All right, guys. Again, useful. A lot of what you see is not what it is in reality. We see colors. In reality, the colors don't exist. We see things three-dimensionally, despite the fact that the eyes usually pick up on things on two-dimensional. So the information gets relayed to the brain, and then the brain looks at it and says, oh, I don't like I just want to put in a little bit more detail. So brain puts some colors in it, and then puts in the details so things are perceived three-dimensionally. And the brain kind of makes up stuff along the way, all right? Because the eyes are not able to perceive everything that we think we can see. On top of that, by the time the information gets to the brain, in reality, optically, everything is upside down. When things are actually, by the time they get to the optic nerves, and from the optic nerves to the brain, everything is upside down. So what does the brain do? The brain looks at it and says, I don't like it. So the brain automatically turns things, reverses the direction of everything. Right? So downside up is the way we will see stuff. So notice that brain does a lot of adjustments. And a lot of what we are seeing is an illusion. Along the way, according to Einstein, brain does the same thing. Brain looks around and says, hey, everything is happening around us, the future, the past, the present. What's the only thing which is relevant, guys? It's the present, right? Not the future, not the past. So that's a simplistic explanation that Einstein comes up with. So it says the time is but a stubborn illusion, meaning that the difference between the past, the present, and the future, it's not there in reality. Nature does not hold that view, except the brain does. The brain looks at it and says, hey, look, what's important is now, not the future, not the present. Let's just focus on what's going on right now. And then that becomes an illusion. That's the way Einstein is looking at it. All right. So that's a bit of a simplistic view. So the better question is going to be the one that we will get to investigate is take the brain out of this, and we will take a scientific look at it. If Einstein is correct, if the past and the future and the present, if they all exist at the same time, why is it we cannot see the future? All right. So does something happen? Does something happen to the structure of the atom, for example? Why is it that we cannot see the past? All right. So what's happening to the atoms making up the universe in the past, and what's happening to the atoms making up the universe in the future? Why is it that they become invisible to us? So that's one of the things that we're going to look at. Now, if you go back to Einstein's view of the universe, this is otherwise known as a block universe, which means that the past, the future, the present all need to exist at the same time. What that means is the past, the present, the future already happened, guys. It's almost like a four-dimensional movie. Now, instead of watching the movie, we are in it. We're part of it. But within this movie, anything and everything which is about to happen to you is already happened. So which means that your life has already been embedded into the tracks of this universe, so to speak, from the beginning to the end. The time you were born and the time that you will die. Everything happened in this universe. Notice that this universe is a static universe under the circumstances. If anything and everything which is about to happen has already happened, and it happened like at the creation of the universe, guys. That's like 14 billion years ago. You're experiencing it right now. But what you're experiencing is an illusion of some sort in Einstein's universe. So what happens to your free will in this universe, if that's the case? What becomes of free will in Einstein's universe? Do you guys notice that free will becomes an illusion as well? All right, and then in this universe, the only thing that rules is the destiny, which means like Shakespeare said 350 years ago, the earth becomes a stage, and you become the actors on the stage, except on the stage, you don't get the ad lib. You have the illusion of free will. You think that you can change things, and the only thing that happens when you try to change things is frustration. If it is exactly like a movie, then the question is, who made this movie? Somebody had to shot the movie, somebody had to write the script, somebody had to edit it. Notice that this kind of a universe requires a creator of some sort. And anytime you have a creator of some sort, you need to invoke a supernatural being like God. Well, if you're a believer, that's perfectly fine, except that's not the way we do science. You cannot invoke supernatural forces in science. So all of a sudden, this universe, which is static, it takes your free will out of the picture. And on top of that, requires a free will. And then the question after question after question regarding who's responsible for your actions. Hitler was responsible for World War II, killing out extermination of 6 million Jews. So some people wanted to question Einstein on that. They said, who's responsible for the extermination of the Jews if there is no free will? All right, so if that's the case, if it's part of your destiny, if you're Hitler, obviously you're going to do what Hitler does. So who would be responsible for that? Now you have to blame a godlike supernatural being for it. Einstein wasn't very happy with that question. He was not comfortable with it. His response was the universe that Einstein himself created, the gravity. The mathematics required that this was a static universe, and that's the way he went. He did not want to allow any sort of interpretations like time travel and that sort of stuff. Speaking of time travel, can you do time travel in Einstein's universe? Guys, you cannot do time travel in this universe, even if the past, the future, the present all exist at the same time, because you cannot even change the present in this universe. So in this universe, the time travel would not be possible. All right, except this universe is going to give us the first condition. The first condition is for us to be able to do time travel. The past, the future, the present all need to exist at the same time. All right, so only within this universe you can take shortcuts through this space-time continuum. And the way this concept is introduced into physics was that originally this was a novel written by Carl Sagan. It later became a movie under the same heading, Contact.
Detection of an unidentified radio source from deep space can neither be confirmed nor denied.
Whatever it is, it ain't local.
Position?
I checked it for barometry somewhere in here, I think.
Vega? Can't be. It's only 26 light years away.
I want all these people out of here.
Having sent this announcement all over the world may well constitute a breach of national security.
Well, this isn't a person-to-person call. This may be an announcement to get our attention.
The president's called an emergency meeting.
You know those interlaced frames that we thought were noise? This is structure.
I'm going to recommend to the president to demilitarize this project immediately.
There's no reason to believe that their intentions are hostile.
There's no proof of that.
Why don't they just speak English?
Mathematics is the only truly universal language center. Buried within the message itself is the key to decoding it.
Those look like engineering schematics, almost like blueprints.
It is our belief that the message contains instructions for building some kind of machine.
A machine?
It might turn out to be some kind of transport.
Transport. The fact is, you don't know what it does. It could be anything.
Nobody's saying this is dangerous.
They're gonna build it.
Who gets to go?
It's complicated, Ellie.
Who gets to go?
By doing this, you're willing to risk your life. You're willing to give your life and die for this. Why?
So what's the premise of this movie?
Ellie, as a child, she's always wanted to learn about space, and then she becomes, I don't know what she becomes, but then she works towards that and eventually finds all this stuff, the signals and the blueprints to create the machine. They build it, and then, yeah, she goes.
All right, Jen, give yourself 5 points. All right, so what's the premise of this movie? The premise of the movie is Contact, right? The title of the movie is the premise of the movie. Contact by an alien civilization. So what do? They provide us with blueprints of a time machine, which happens to be a wormhole. All right, so this alien civilization is located where?
In the Star Vega.
Okay, in the Star Vega. And the Star System Vega is located 26 light years away, right? So what does it mean? So even if we had the technology that we don't, that would allow us to travel at the light speed. Okay, so there's no such technology, by the way. Even at the light speed, it would take us 26 years to get there one way. And then she would spend 18 hours there and come back with, and then the round trip is also going to take 26, right? So the round trip would take 52 years total. All right, so that's the best possible technology that we could have, and that technology would actually allow us to travel at the light speed, right? So at the light speed, it would take 52 years. The round trip, the journey would take 52 years. So when Carl Sagan was writing his novel, he wanted her to actually go to the Vega star system and then come back, but this needed to happen immediately. All right? So she was supposed to get there within a fraction of a second, spend 18 hours there, and be back within the next fraction of a second. That's the whole idea. Is that making sense? Remember the first question that I asked in the beginning of the semester? I said, what if time travel were possible? So I could leap 100 years into the future, spend 18 hours there, and come back to the next fraction of a second. All right, so it's loosely based on this movie. Okay. So for something like that to happen, you need to have a wormhole, in essence. So she could take a shortcut through the space-time continuum. So she could travel a distance, which is 26 light years, within a fraction of a second. Spend 18 hours there, and be back within the next fraction of a second. That's the whole idea. In essence, this is like traveling 52 years into the future, spending 18 hours there, and then come back to the next fraction of a second. It's the same idea. So what makes this possible is a wormhole. So what is a wormhole? So they end up getting the blueprints for a wormhole. And the wormhole is a shortcut through the space-time continuum. All right, the way we look at it is today's wormholes are two black holes connected. If you have a black hole from the present connected to a black hole in the future, obviously it's going to allow time travel to the future. If you have a black hole connected to a black hole to the past, that becomes a black hole, that becomes a wormhole to the past. So that becomes a shortcut to the past. Or they can be artificially constructed, and this is the artificial construction that they get from the civilization in Vega star system. All right, so now that we discussed so far, so what happens? If you take a trip through a shortcut, like a wormhole, how long would it take for you to travel 26 light years away? To a star system, which is located 26 light years, like the Vega star system. If you're taking a shortcut through a wormhole, it would take absolutely no time at all. In the movie, you could just see her just going through the wormhole. Guys, those are special effects. In reality, no time at all. You're here, you're there. And then you get bored and you're here again. Got it? So that's the meaning of wormholes being shortcuts. So for wormholes, you could do time travel. You can also go from one place in space to a different place in space. And it would take no time at all. All right, so what was the evidence? So she goes to Vega, spends 18 hours there, and then she's back here. And everything takes place by the time that vessel ends up landing somewhere, right? About a fraction of a second later. That's what it is. So where was the evidence in the movie, or where's the evidence in the movie that she actually traveled to Vega?
There's the only thing I think was when she said 18 hours, and later they figured out the recording was 18 hours.
Okay, very good. Or I'm going to give you 10 points for that one. And some of you guys were trying to make the same comment, give yourself 5 points. Evidence that she traveled to Vega star system was the fact that she had 18 hours of static recording on her video device, despite the fact that she was gone, or supposedly she was gone, only a fraction of a second. Because she was inside this vessel, and the vessel just dropped for a fraction of a second, maybe a second, no more than that. And within that time period, she had 18 hours of life experience. All right, so what else do we have? All right, so Einstein's theory of gravity is based upon the assumption that the time is a continuum. What that means, the future, the past, the present, all need to happen at the same time. If future does not exist, and not happening at this point, the gravity wouldn't exist. If the past is not happening, the gravity doesn't exist. All right, so which means that the future, the past, the present, they all need to be equally real, even though we only experience the present. So if Einstein's theory of gravity is correct, what causes gravity is the warp of the space-time continuum. What causes the warp or the changing curvature is the mass sitting on top of it. Now, if the theory is correct, why is it that we don't see these lines? Why is it that we don't see space the way it is visualized? I mean, at night, if you see the, just go out and look at the moon, full moon, if you can see it, and then just keep staring at it until you can see the curvature of the space-time continuum. Check to see how it works. Can you actually see something like that? You can try. You can keep trying. You're not going to be able to see anything unless you're high on something illegal. It's out of the question. The reason why you're not going to be able to see something like that is because this is a three-dimensional representation of a four-dimensional existence. The fourth dimension is the time dimension. For you to be able to see all these curvatures, you should be on the fifth dimension. All right, so we live in a four-dimensional existence, which means that we see three dimensions and we move on to the fourth dimension, which is the time dimension. If you can get yourself up to the next dimension, you can see the entire history of the universe. Not only can you see these curvatures, but you can see the entire history of the universe from beginning to the end of it. And those of you guys who've seen the movie Interstellar, if you have, or if you haven't, I'm going to make it extra credit. Maybe we'll discuss it at some point. All right, when the main character got pulled into the center of a black hole, he ended up getting pulled into the fifth dimension, so he could actually see the entire history of the universe. The only thing that he was interested in was his own history, so he tried to change it. Anyway, so Kip Thorne is the guy who came up with the time travel through wormholes. And then this guy is a theoretical physicist from Caltech. I think recently retired a couple of years ago. He's also the Nobel Prize winner in physics 3 years ago. He's a big name. All right. So for time travel to happen, space-time continuum needs to be curved. If it's flat, it's out of the question. It needs to be curved so we can take shortcuts. And the only way you can take the shortcuts is through wormholes. So these wormholes are shortcuts through the space-time continuum. So they can take you one point in time to a different point in time. That's what they do, not only space as well as time. So you can go to the future as well as you can go to the past if there are. So only through wormholes this sort of journey is possible.